The last thing I want to chat about today is actually just is a little bit of a teamwork thing. It's only 5 minutes because I want to make a quick phone call before 11. But it's like I was thinking about a story the other day. It was another Sunswift story, and I was thinking about I don't really want to just sit here and tell you stories because I just find it weird. It feels very self indulgent and kind of boring. But I thought I'd actually rather describe a situation to you that was put to people and ask you to think about how you would deal with it, right? So this is very quick, a few minutes of a story, and then I'll just say go and think about it, and we can chat about it next week, maybe at the end of the lecture. But in 2017, we did that race from Darwin to Adelaide that I mentioned. Now, the team was very tired. We have 30 people in the team, 30 people on the road with us, and of those 30 people, everyone's extremely stressed, extremely tired, extremely fatigued. You have a whole bunch of people in their different moods. You have some people who are ready to go home, like the screw this types of people. You have the people who are like win at all costs, just absolute hustlers. You start this 6-day race. And on the first day, two really terrible things happen. The first one that happens is that you get about 1 hour into the day. And 1 hour into the day, one of the front brake calipers comes off, sends the car off the road into a tree. Not into a tree, nearly into a tree. And this comes off the back of problems like this had happened before. Right, there'd been some problems like this before, some serious dynamic systems. What is a brake caliper? Well, the short 10-second explanation is it's that if you look inside a wheel, you'll see this a lot on nicer cars. If you look inside the front of a car, you'll often see this kind of thing. It's the thing that clamps down on the brake. You probably know this from a bicycle. Bicycles have tiny ones, right? So these are the big things. This kind of fell off, literally fell off the car and got caught in the wheel, and the car was okay, but like it could have caused a lock and sent someone into a tree. Later that day, I believe, I might have the days wrong, later that day, 4 hours later, one of the tires came off and sent the car into the dirt shoulder of the road and lost control. Very lucky there was no trees around. Right, so imagine you're driving a car and one of your tires just explodes off the car, kind of thing. The wheel's still there, but the tire kind of explodes. Then on day 2, and everyone's getting pretty angsty by this point, on day 2, 7 hours into the day, just before you finish, something even worse happens, which is that a rear control arm snaps off. Now what this does, rear control arm suspension, is that your wheel on a car is basically held on by, I should just Google one sec. It's not very technical, but just to understand it, you imagine for a second that your wheel on a car like this there's a spring, but this is the 4 points here are actually bolstered onto the car. And what happened was one of these points just snapped. And what that meant was that the rear wheel, which in a car is normally straight, it got suddenly jolted to the left, because you imagine you're holding onto it by 4 points, one of them snapped. So suddenly the car, and I remember this one, car loses control just after a narrow bridge and veers off the road to a stop. This makes the car undrivable at this point. There's a replacement part that's needed to be made, and this entire trip so far, we've been averaging 60 kilometers an hour. Now, the real question here that was pressed to the team at the end of the day 2 is, crap, what do we do now? Do we keep going, or do we stop? And the kind of question here is that, well, on one side you have the keep going argument, which is that, say 30 people, 20 people have put thousands of hours, does that even make sense? Yeah. Put 1,000 hours into this one event, for a year. and there is a way forward to keep going, to fix the thing and to keep going. And the other kind of thought is that we could kill someone or damage something because these problems, we're worried these problems might keep happening. And then the next kind of conundrum here is that you have approximately, you have 4 more days of driving to do. And because of all these breakdowns you've had and problems you've had, you have to do this driving now at an average being the keyword here, of 80 kilometers an hour, which means that when you account for small towns and stuff, you're probably going to have to absolutely floor it as hard as you can and go nearly twice as fast, which is about 4 times the kinetic energy or some number like that. So we're talking something that's 4 or 5 times more dangerous. But also, the problems that have happened so far are relatively well contained. So we know how to kind of keep track of things. So what I want you to think about, and I'm going to wrap it up here, what I want you to think about in light of this is not so much what would you do, because you probably don't know what to do, but it's how would you go about trying to figure out what to do? And I asked this question because it was a situation I was put in, because in 2017 I wasn't running the team. I was just kind of the senior person on the team. I just graduated already, and there was an academic there from UNSW. So it was largely me and a professor from UNSW had to figure out not what to do. That would be our decision in the end, but it's how to actually go about exploring this with a team of 30 sleep-deprived people who are just extremely stressed and angry, and a whole bunch of people that would, literally slaughter each other if we pulled out, and a whole bunch of people would slaughter each other if we kept going. So it's that's the kind of question here. So have a think about that. I'd love to chat about what some people think next week around how would you go about that process. So you got 30 people, you're sitting down in a circle, and you have an hour to talk to them and come to some kind of understanding or conclusion, ask questions, make statements, etc. So have a think about that. You can share on the forum if you want, or you can email me, or you can just type it in the chat next week. But let's chat about it at the end of the lecture next week, just as an exercise in thinking about people and teamwork and situations and dealing with stress. So I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you all for coming today. Next week I only have 1 lecture. This is our second last lecture. And yeah, sounds good. I'll chat to you next week, and I'll send you out a notice on Friday. Good luck with iteration 3, and have a great day, everyone.